So let me give everybody an update on what's happening in Syria. Of course, Trump announced recently that we will be withdrawing from northern Syria. And the fallout has been something else. Pretty much immediately when he announced that, we had a Turkish invasion of Kurdish territory in Syria. And there's been war crimes committed. There's been murders. Apparently, there's stories of Turkish troops flanking the U.S. troops, and which, you know, is a very scary thing. So it's been wild to see the fallout from that announcement from Trump. Now, here's one of the things that we learned recently. The Hill says, Pentagon chief confirms Trump ordered larger withdrawal of U.S. forces from Syria. Now, my first reaction when I saw that was, oh, that's good, because I thought that meant not just northern Syria, the rest of Syria. But no, I clicked the link and I read through, and what he did is he ordered a larger troop withdrawal specifically from that region in northeastern Syria. And the reason why was there were reports that the Turkish troops were like flanking the U.S. troops, which is scary because you want an attack on Turkish troops against U.S. troops? You want to talk about an international crisis? Oh my God. Oh my God. So he ordered further withdrawal from northeastern Syria. That doesn't mean in other parts of Syria that we're getting out. It was in that specific region. So, you know, it's really bizarre that he calls for a withdrawal, but it's only in this very particular region of Syria. And in this particular region of Syria, the very U.S. presence there for an extended period of time really just served as a buffer between the Turks invading Syria, taking over Kurdish territory, and really trying to take out the Kurds. Because there's a long-standing, obviously, hatred there between Turkey and the Kurds. They consider them all terrorists, all these Kurds terrorists, and so they have no problem going in there and wiping them out. Now, the other thing is, there were about 950 ISIS fighters that have now been freed, that have now been released. The Kurds were guarding them, and then the Turks came in, and apparently they let him go. I don't know how else they get out. I mean, maybe ISIS just kind of breaks out, but yeah, I think it's much more likely the Turks freed him. And this kind of goes to a point that a lot of people have been making for a long time, including myself, that Erdogan, just like the U.S. and just like Saudi Arabia, is more than willing to use jihadist help to further his own goals. So you have this like Turkish and jihadist alliance, and then that is happening at the same time now that the Kurds decided, well, we don't want to get, wiped off the face of the planet and be the victims of ethnic cleansing, so they made a deal with the Assad government. So again, the Hill says, just in, Kurds say they will work with Assad's forces to fend off Turkish invasion. Now, a lot of people will hear that in the West and they'll be like outraged by it. But what everybody needs to understand is these Kurds, now I believe in a free Kurdistan, by the way. I think we should have a free Kurdistan. But these Kurds, as of right now, they're Syrian Kurds. And so for the Syrian government to come and protect Syrian Kurds from a Turkish invasion, I file that under common sense. I file that under, well, what was supposed to happen? Was the U.S. pulls out. Granted, we should have never been in there in the first place, but we pull out. There is a green light for Turkey to come in and do whatever the hell they want to the Kurds. They do that. What are we supposed to do? Tell the Kurds, no, you must suffer on your own and don't make a deal with your own government to protect your behinds. Of course they're going to go to the Assad government. Of course they're going to do that. They're technically Syrian Kurds. And they're going to say, hey, we may have massive, massive problems with the Assad government, but they're not about to ethnic cleanse us this second, so let's get their help to defeat the Turks and to push the Turks back. And so that's what we're seeing happen right now, right this second. They made a deal with them, and they're allowing in Syrian government forces, and they can now, push back the Turks. But that's, leads to a bigger question of what happens if you have just flat out fighting between Turkish forces and Syrian forces. I mean, there's been a Syrian civil war going on for a long time, but now is it going to be like directly like Erdogan versus Assad, Turkish military versus Syrian military. I mean, it really is just an absolute mess happening right now. And then the final update here that I want to show you is this. Furious Republicans prepare to rebuke Trump on Syria. Now, honestly, stop and think. When have they done this before? When have the Republicans said, you know what, man? You've gone too far. Answer, they haven't done that. They'll defend Trump come hell or high water. That's what they'll do. That's who they are. But the one time that they go, we're going to officially rebuke him on this, it's when he's withdrawing troops from somewhere. Now, don't get me wrong. Again, I think this is a massively complicated situation. I think you could argue with Trump specifically in the way that he went about this, but it is quite telling that the one time that they go, how could you, sir? Is when he's withdrawing troops from somewhere. None of them cared that we were there illegally in the first place, that it was against U.S. law, against international law, violating Syrian sovereignty. Nobody cared about that. They were just, yeah, whatever, go do what you want and we'll support it. But when he withdraws troops, they're going, no, you must send them back. Now, thankfully, they're also talking about something that's actually reasonable, and the reasonable thing is what to do now moving forward. And the answer is you got to take, diplomatic and economic action against Turkey. And that's all we could do at this point in time. So you can cut off the arms deals, stop the weapons from going in there. You can question their status in NATO, and you could do direct sanctions of Erdogan and direct sanctions of the Turkish government. So that's the other part of this, which I think is actually a positive thing and I think makes perfect sense. But the rebuke on the withdrawal is just, it drives me crazy because these people simply do not care that we do illegal and offensive wars all the time, and we're in Syria illegally right now. They never cared about that. To them, the crisis is only with the withdrawal. It wasn't going there in the first place. Because that's the reality of the situation, guys. We should have never been there in the first place. Ever. That's not... We had no business there. We just, whatever you think of what's happening now, and we all agree it's a mess, but we had no business there in the first place, and it was illegal that we went in there in the first place. So, I think that's really important to point out, and this is the only time that the Republicans are getting mad at him. Now, Donald Trump is being politically intelligent about this in that he's going around bragging and saying, I told you I was going to end the wars in the Middle East, and now I'm ending the wars in the Middle East. What do you mean? I campaigned on this. I'm just doing it. And his Twitter feed is all like, stop the endless wars, and his nonstop stuff like that. And of course, every other political loser in the country is taking the bait. And they're letting him frame the discussion. And so his framing is, I'm anti-war, they're pro-war. And they're like, yeah, I'm pro-war, and he's anti-war. That's right. Oh, no. You're helping him for 2020, you losers. That's not how you counter-argue. The real counter-argument is, you only took troops out of northern Syria. And by the way, this was the one place where we actually were providing a buffer from a freaking ethnic cleansing, okay? But what about the rest of Syria? You're still in Syria. You're still in Syria with thousands of troops. Like, what do you mean? You're in Syria, you're still in Iraq, you're still in Afghanistan, okay? We're still bombing 8 different countries. Trump increased drone strikes by 432%. It was already bad enough under Obama with high civilian death rates. He's surpassed that already. Obama's 8 years versus Trump's been in there, 3 years? Guys, he's escalating to war right this second with Iran, waging economic warfare on Iran, pulled out of the Iran deal. He's seizing shipments of food going into Venezuela. They want to topple that Venezuelan government. They want to do regime change. This guy is not anti-war by any stretch of the imagination. And by the way, so what made sense in this region in northern Syria? Like, what would I have done if, my administration comes to me, okay, sir, we have to deal with this situation in Syria. What are we going to do? If Donald Trump went to the UN, okay, and had plans laid out, okay, we're going to pull our troops out of northern Syria, but we're going to have UN peacekeepers go in there. And we know we know that Turkey's not going to do anything. They're not going to invade Syria. They're not going to go after the Kurds because we got UN peacekeepers there. They know they can't do that. That's one thing you could have done. Go to the UN first, have UN peacekeepers there, US troops pull out. It's no longer a unilateral approach. I would have been totally fine with that. I would support that. The other thing is, you go to the Assad government. listen, I get it. In Washington, they think he's public enemy number one. He's not. ISIS is the real threat. Al-Qaeda is the real threat against the United States. Assad's not going to attack Nebraska or anything like that. Let's be serious. So you go to the Assad government and you say, hey, listen, man, we're going to pull out of this region. So let's get you and the Kurds to sit down at the table, have some sort of an agreement. And then when the U.S. pulls out, you already have Syrian troops there to deter any Turkish aggression. So that's what I would have done. Because I also don't want our troops in Syria. I don't want our troops in any of these places because they're illegal and offensive wars. So what you do is up front, you meet with either the Syrian government or the UN or both. And you say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to pull out. We need somebody to fill the vacuum, somebody to deter Turkish aggression, so on and so forth. And then I would have 100% defended Donald Trump on this front. 100%. But he didn't do that. He pulled out, didn't talk to the UN, didn't talk to the Syrian government, didn't talk to his advisors. And then the obvious thing happened, which is he pulled out, the Turks filled the vacuums, and they wanted to destroy the Kurds. So when people are making the claims of, oh my God, the Turks are trying to do ethnic cleansing, they're correct. They're not wrong. But still, the point that those people are missing is their reaction is, oh, we should have just stayed there forever. No. That also disregards the fact that, again, we're there illegally in the first place. So it's really annoying because you have the reckless approach of Trump and you have the political stupidity of everybody else who are immediately taking the reflexive opposite position of Trump. That position being, no, we should have just stayed there. No, it's more complicated than that. And, they're feeding directly into his framing of he's anti-war, we're pro-war, and that's just politically incredibly stupid. So, but anyway, this is your update on what's happening in Syria. And, hopefully the Syrian government is able to deter the Turks and can calm down the situation, because what's happening to the Kurds is terrible. The U.S. has betrayed the Kurds many times, and really, the real conversation should have been, negotiations beginning for a free Kurdistan. I understand that's incredibly difficult to do. I understand that Kurdistan would, kind of cross over into various different countries, but if anybody deserves it, it's them. I mean, they have really aided in defeating ISIS, as the Syrian government has as well, but they've really aided in defeating ISIS, and also there's a pretty radical democratic experiment going on with certain elements of the Kurds. So anyway, that's your breakdown of it now. It's a mess. Everybody's wrong in this situation, just in different ways.